Hi there, this is Jen, and thank you for joining me on the Scrapbook Pal YouTube channel today. Today I'm making a super cute, really easy Valentine's Day card, and I'm going to be creating a stencil. And so I am using the Lawn Fawn Simply Celebrate collection, and it is a stamp set as well as there is a coordinating die. And I thought I'd go ahead and create a stencil using kind of the connected hearts die. And so I am just holding up that die to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of cardstock, just so I can kind of get an idea of how much of it fits across that space. And then I'm using a piece of acetate. I have the acetate has a backing on it, and I'm just going to leave it there just so that I can more easily see what I'm doing. This piece of acetate is cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so it is the same size as a card panel. And I'm going to go ahead and draw some lines on there, just some guidelines for me so that I know that I'm kind of getting it where I need to be. The first line I drew was a little bit wonky and crooked, and so what I ended up doing was flipping the piece around and trying again. And so I just want a little bit of room left on each side just to make sure that I'm getting the die on the acetate fairly evenly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark off right around the curve of that heart, and that is where I want to place my die each time I use it to cut the acetate. And then I'm going to take the T-ruler and line that up with the lines on my mat to make sure I get a straight line this time. And I'm just taking just a regular ballpoint pen, and I will go ahead and mark that. And then when I take that die piece, I'm just going to go ahead and set it. So again, that curve is right against that line that I drew. And I'll add a piece of a low-tack tape to keep that in place where I need it to be. Then I'll go ahead and run that through my die cut machine. And then for the acetate die cut pieces, I didn't use them on this card, but I did set them aside so that I can use them for another project. So I am definitely keeping those. I'm not putting them to waste. But for the spacing between the rows of hearts, I basically just used my craft mat and looked at the lines on that to kind of determine the spacing. It's nothing that was calculated or measured out. But I went ahead and I did that, so I created 5 rows of hearts, and that is going to be my stencil. Of course, if you don't have acetate, you can always use a piece of cardstock to create a stencil just the same exact way. And then I'm going to take that stencil and lay it over my white piece of cardstock, which is the same size, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I'll add some more of that low-tack tape on all 4 sides just to keep it in place. And I started out using a piece of paper to keep the color away. I don't know why I did this, to be honest, because basically what I'm doing is I'm just taking the color and I'm blending it down that entire row. If you're going to choose different colors for different parts, you would need, you could use either some tape to mask off the areas you don't want the color in, or you could even use the leftover pieces from the die cuts that you've cut out. But the first color that I used was the Catherine Pooler in Lime Ricky, and then I went ahead and moved in with the Aquatini. And so I'm just taking my blending brush and I am making sure to blend the colors into each other so it's a nice even blend across the hearts, across each of the rows. And then the third color I used was Party Dress, and then the very last color that I'm using right now is called Samba. And then I'll go ahead and peel that away, and I really like just how kind of simple that looks, but I do go ahead and match up the stamp with this just to give it a little bit more definition. And so I grabbed the stamp from the stamp set. And to get this line up, you can definitely place that stencil right back over that panel and then place your stamp over that. But I just went ahead and I was a little bit worried about messing it up, and so I just went ahead and placed the stamp directly onto the cardstock. But I am going to be doing some white heat embossing, and so I have prepped my cardstock with some anti-static powder. and I will go ahead and ink up my stamp with some watermark ink. And these aren't going to be perfectly even, but it's fairly easy to go ahead and line the stamp up with the image that's been stenciled. And I'm going to follow that all the way down, so I stamp each over each of the stenciled portions, and I'm just going to grab my scratch piece of paper and some white embossing powder and go ahead and spread that over the entire panel. In some areas I didn't get stamped up as well as others, so there are some areas where the embossing powder isn't as defined as others, and I try and cover that up kind of with the other elements that I do end up adding to the card. And then I'll go ahead and take my heat tool and melt that embossing powder. And then I'm using another Lawn Fawn product. This was previously released, and it is called Will You Be Mine. It is a super adorable. The set is so cute. So I'm going to use the stamp set and the matching dies, and I'm using some Copics. And the colors for the whales are BG05, BG01, and B00. And I'm just going over it with the darkest first, then the mid-tone, and then the light. And then I'll go back over it a second time with the darkest color and the mid-tone and blend that out a little bit better. And then I'm going to take the coordinating dies for this set and run these through my die cut machine. Then I have these super adorable whales. I just think they're so cute. But I went ahead and I trimmed down the heart panel about 1/8 of an inch around all the sides, and I'm matting that on a piece of black cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I went ahead and I stamped up the sentiment onto a black piece of cardstock with some white, basically a heat embossed white embossing powder for the sentiment. It just says Happy Valentine's Day. And then I'm using some scrapbook adhesive 3D foam squares for that sentiment. And I'm also going to use those foam squares for the whales and then the little kind of water spout that comes with the die set. I don't know what that's called. And then I'm going to go ahead and place my elements on the card. And then I wanted to add several hearts, but I only ended up adding one. So in the Simply Celebrate set, there is a heart stamp as well as a die that matches with that. So I used that heart, and I went ahead and I cut several of those out of white cardstock, and then I'm just placing them onto some low tack tape onto the sticky part so they don't move around. And then I'm using Copics in RV04 and RV06 to color up. And I colored up several of them, but ended up just using the one, and I placed that between the two whales. And then to finish it off, I added a little bit of sparkle using some frosted lace stickles, and that's going to do it for me today. But quite honestly, I was not real sure what I was going to do with this stamp set, but I'm so happy that it came together, and I loved being able to use the die and the stamp set in kind of a little bit of a different way. And I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you did, I would love it if you would give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the ScrapbookPal YouTube channel. The design team has amazing projects on the channel as well as on the blog, so don't forget to check those out. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I hope to catch you next time.